Hello. Sorry about that. My phone changed IP addresses, and so it was connected to. I had to figure out the new IP address as we were starting. So, I'm also downloading the chat app, the Restream.io chat app, real quick because I need to be able to see the chats from YouTube and Twitch and Discord all at the same time. So I'm just trying to make sure that's working real quick. As I said, in the chat, we're going to be making sure we're going to be revisiting Idem AWS, making sure that everything is working in Idem AWS, and talking about some of the refactors that are going to go into it. And thank you for joining today. It's been fun to get back into the streaming. It's been long overdue. Some of the I just wanted to show off real quick. My brother's been going awesome with the 3D printer. Ooh, hey. Printed me this key for my keyboard. This companion cube key. So it's been fun. We've been having fun with the 3D printer. Printing keycaps is just one of our fun projects going on. Oh, and Restream.io is already running. Just one sec. Welcome, Script Automate. You are one of the other streamers for our channel, so very happy to have you here participating. Yeah, the Ooh Shiny is the Restream.io, and I've talked about that on Friday, and I did a test stream on Friday, 2 test streams, because it didn't work on YouTube the first time. And I forgot to change the channel. Yeah, like I can type into the Discord over here, say hello. And it gets sent to Discord, Twitch. Yeah, there we go. Discord, Akmod, hello. From the Restream bot. So it's handy because I can just always have the streams chat. Apparently, I have to have the chat app open to be able to do it. And so if you want to use it, Script Automate, in your stream, then just let me know and I can help you set it up. Pretty easy. Yeah. Let's see. So other than that, we've talked about what we're doing with Idem Cloud. I've got some more direction with Idem Cloud over the weekend. I got a list of specific exec modules and states. Oh yeah, if you're joining the Discord today, then I'll join the Discord too. We can just have a party in there. I got a specific list of functionality that we need from Idem AWS. And so before, when we were looking at Idem AWS, it was like, cool, here's their entire massive API. Let's just wrap everything. And it was a chore. And so now we have the ability to, or now that I have direction, it's like, cool, I know exactly which things I'm going to get. Going to get the test working rock solid for those things and kind of just disable and shuffle aside the tests and functionality for the things that aren't the thing that I need in the moment. So hopefully that works for anyone. Any other questions before we get started? Exciting, we're going to actually be looking at code today. I'm sorry that we didn't last time. Made me sad too. Window. You also might remember the last time we were looking at accounts. And I think that was on Wednesday's stream when we were looking that was like my first day getting back into streaming. And we just looked at all of the pop projects that exist and poked at them to see what's going on. One of those projects is account, and I kind of let account backends go by the wayside, but I'm actually using account backends now. Darn it. I was thinking, yeah, I really want to talk about what I'm doing now. But then I realized I'm working on mostly proprietary stuff within SaltStack Enterprise. I'm using account and I'm using account backends for some pretty awesome stuff. We can leave it at that. All right, let's look at PyCharm. Why is PyCharm not showing? There we go. Why can't I zoom in? I'm sorry for this technical difficulty, but why can't I zoom in on PyCharm? It's probably a plugin. Oh, and you can't see my settings window. I'm sorry. I want to make the code bigger because I know that's annoying to try and watch the stream with my tiny, tiny text. So I'm going to try and make that bigger real quick. How do I zoom in and out in PyCharm? If I do a control plus, no, control scroll, view, enter full screen mode. That seems fun. Yeah, that fits better inside of the OBS window. How can I change font size? Ah, there we go. Settings, editor, general mouse. Editor, are these off? I'm sorry that you can't see what I'm doing. Actually, I can change it so you can do that. Let's see. Control 11? I think that does it. No. Full screen. Now you can see exactly what I'm seeing. Editor. Mouse. Settings, editor. Oh, general. Change font size with control plus mouse wheel. Perfect. I can go back to OBS and say only show PyCharm. Now I can zoom in. There we go. Nice. So where we left off with AWS, we have a whole bunch of account plugins and account backend that we never wrote for SSM. Yeah, a whole bunch of authentication plugins. There are so many ways to authenticate to AWS. I'm using Bodo. You can also use roles from IAM. You can also use Google. So many ways to. Exec modules. Whew. There's a list of what we've done so far. So let's try running the test suite just for fun, see where it takes us. Add configuration. I'm gonna have to share my full window because you can't see when settings windows pop up like this. Full screen, boom. I should also be watching the stream on the side so I can see when things change. I am watching the text for the chat on the side, so if something looks wrong or if you can't hear me, just say so in the chat. Okay. So first thing I'm gonna need for running Idem AWS tests is we are going to need we're gonna need an image for local stack. And I'm pretty sure I already had one actually. Let me see. File, open recent item, or maybe it's this window. File, open. Wait, not that. configurations. Not in here. Open recent. I don't know where I put it. Oh, we'll just make it from scratch because that can be helpful. We're just gonna do this easy way. I like doing things the easy way. Close out of all my other shells. The file structure window is a bit small text, so it's hard to read what's in there. Yeah, I hear you. I'm just gonna say and AWS. Cool. Cool. Now I'm in my AWS virtual environment. Let's make sure I have everything installed for my current environment. Environment. -E full. Cool. Local stack. And just so you know, local stack makes it so that I can run AWS functions and tests without actually connecting to AWS. Then as I'm developing a feature, I can list things, I can create things and delete them, and local stack mocks actual AWS functionality without actually doing it on AWS. So it's a good way to, wrap the API with zero consequences before actually plugging it into AWS and making sure everything works there too. So we're going to start off with local stack. So what I did there is after I activated my virtual environment, I just said pip install -e dot full, and that installed every dependency I have listed for AWS. So that's what's going on there. And now I'm just going to add a debug run configuration for running test with PyTest. PyTest Idem OS. Our target is Idem AWS tests directory, working directory. Probably right here. Need that. Before launch. Oh, go away. Add run external tool, refresh account. So what that one does for me, why did I add that but not the other one? Refresh alt account. I just add both of them. Okay, this has to do with credentials, so I actually am going to switch back to just showing PyCharm. Sorry about that. Yes, that's what I want. I'm really sorry that I've got some credential stuff that I've got to edit here, so I can't show everything. File open. New window, file open. No, wait, not file open. So sorry, I've got some busy work to do here. Or some confidential stuff to edit. Edit configurations, environment variables. Okay, we're good. So now I should be able to just press the play button here and it'll run all of the tests. Oh, I don't like that. Move to right top. All of my font is pretty small here, isn't it? I haven't streamed on this computer. So since Salt was acquired by, I haven't streamed really since Salt was acquired by VMware. And so I have a new computer, and so I don't have any of the same things set up that I used to for when I last was working on Idem AWS or when I last. So I apologize for some of the nitty gritty stuff that's getting out of the way here, but hopefully it gets easier over time. I'm just looking at my font settings real quick and making the font bigger in PyCharm. Font JetBrains Mono. I like Noto Sans. Size 16. Okay, that's better. How about 20? Whoa, that's huge. And why didn't it do it everywhere? There we go. And everything should be super visible. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is everything visible? Let's see. What are we seeing on the stream? I need to look at this. Awesome. Text font is better. Thank you for that feedback. Really appreciate it. And Script Automate here, he also did all of the editing of, fixed all of the links once we changed the URL for Twitch. So thank you so much for. Now I'm watching the stream on the side just to make sure that everything looks blurry to me. I hope it doesn't look blurry to anyone. My voice is hurting today. All right. Top level collect. No module named Cryptodome. The text font could be a little bigger. Yeah. Thank you for that feedback. Let's increase the size again. Let's go to 32. Make this font obscenely huge. Whoa. How's that? That's good. I want everyone to be able to read everything super clear. I might be annoyed by this later. I wish I had like a different, like I could toggle between settings for streaming versus when I normally work, but maybe I'll get used to this. Maybe it'll be really helpful for me to be able to. But I am getting LASIK in about 2 weeks, and so I won't need my glasses anymore. I'll have to get used to looking at myself like this. Good to read, but can you program in that small window? Yes, I believe so, because I'm gonna pull this up and then I'm gonna go like this. I'm not gonna have my test window and this open at the same time. Yeah, because that would be a very tiny space for trying to write code. I'm hoping that as we get, yeah, as I stream more and more, it'll like all of this will just fall into place. Okay, so running the test, no module named Cryptodome. So let's get that installed in there. Hit install PyCryptodomeX. Already satisfied. Okay. Oh, that means my test configuration that I created isn't using the right Python. Let me show my settings again. one can be helpful. So opening settings, and now brother. All. Environment, virtual and WS in Python 3.9. Okay. Okay. Nice. That is the interpreter for this. Now I can run my tests. Everything fails. Cool. At least the tests are running. They are failing super fast. What's failing here? Skipped test. Backend has no attribute. I probably need to pick install account from the local source. Because I've made changes to account that make to work with backend plugins, like I said before. And now what's my error? Table does not exist. Okay. Unable to locate credentials. No credentials error. Oh, fun. Okay, I'm gonna have to turn off. I'm gonna edit some credentials files again, which means I'm gonna have to go to my talking screen, which means you can look at my beautiful face and the chat and this wonderful poster from Midnight Gospel. I'm gonna edit my credentials files real quick. Sorry. We ever just like get straight into writing Python and have maybe one day. Yeah, it looks right. Switching back now to Patreon. Let's try doing some stuff in the command line. If I say item exec aws dot, or that last command. Oh. Instance dot list. Unable to locate credentials. Okay, that's our problem here. AWS account OS photo and one sec, I'm looking at credential files again. I'm doing it in a different window. Yes, I'm intending to do this with Bodo. I think, hold on. I think I know how to fix this. If I just do, look, it's expecting photo credentials. Oh, yeah, I know what this is. Okay, sorry. It wants me to have an ID and a key, even if they're wrong. I'm logging into photo. Fix that. Okay, test image create. What's my error now? Nice. Our errors are much less. Look, we're actually able to create key pairs, create volumes, IAM roles. Wow, a lot of stuff is working. So let's talk about what we need to fix then with AWS. Huh. Image seems to be broken. So one of the things that we had talked about in the cloud working group was that for Idem AWS, we were trying to make it super complex in getting and having this tagging system. You can see that we have a provider, or as part of the profiles, I guess you can't see it here because it's not in my code block right here, is we have this complex tagging system. We've also talked about doing asset tracking. You can keep track of what item has created with item. You can keep, so that item keeps track of what item has created. And we've thought of so many ways of doing this. So that way you can have a state file for AWS, and this is something I actually can show. Like we wanted to be able to create a VPC and then use the colloquial name of the VPC inside of another state. Rather than, so like if you wanted to create an EC2 instance, you could use the name of the VPC instead of the VPC ID. And that would make it more intuitive to write SLS files using Idem AWS instead of needing to do some Jinja nonsense to be able to get ideas all over the place. And we've had so much deliberation about this and having like our tagging system, and you have to make sure that all of your AWS resources are blessed by Idem before Idem will recognize them. And that's kind of how we were looking at things before. Or you would have to, or you would have to have a file, a local file that would track what was created by item. And I think what the consensus is, kind of where we left, was Idem AWS will be a raw wrapper of the AWS, of the Bodo API. It'll just be a raw wrapper. Nothing fancy, no fancy asset tracking. We'll leave that all to the person using Idem AWS. Or if you want to write a tool that uses Idem AWS to do asset tracking, and if you want to write extensions for the states I'm writing that, you know, makes them more intuitive, then that is something for another tool to do. This one, just this tool, Idem AWS, AWS is complicated enough as it is. So we're just going to make this a raw wrapper of the Bodo API, and that's it. So one of the things I'm going to do as part of this refactor is remove all of the tagging that we've done and save the asset tracking for a different tool. So if you disagree, if you agree, let me know. I mean, it's a huge decision, and getting anything done with AWS is a big, it's a tall order. It's heavy. But I value your opinions, and let me know what you think. A lot of what drives these changes too is before when working on Idem AWS, I was coming at it from a research perspective and let's try everything and let's get it working. And now with VMware behind the wheel, it's like, okay, we have Idem AWS. Here's what we want out of it. And at the end of the day, my marching orders come from VMware. And so it's a, I mean, there's pros and cons to everything. On one side, it's like, now we're doing exactly what VMware wants. And that's great for VMware and for me. But if you were really excited about the way tagging was working the way we had previously talked about it, then that can be down, I guess. Let's talk about it. Let's find solutions that work for everyone. If you want to have the tagging system that we had talked about before, we can easily make a plugin that does. Checking messages real quick, making sure I'm not missing. We should talk at some point about the Bodo wrapping, because I know both Bodo and Bodo 3 APIs have docs that can be generated and manipulated to potentially auto-gen or Idem AWS help. Oh my goodness, please. Yes. I was hoping that we could just have, like, my solution was to hire interns, and I've been asking for interns for like a full year since I started on Idem AWS, because getting the documentation in there, it is so you could script it. So yes, getting the docs from the Bodo APIs would be incredibly useful, and let's talk about that. Do you want to talk about that right now? Do you want to jump on Discord? Let me open Discord on the computer I stream. That's a talk we should have. Because one of the things that's going to make Idem AWS useful is if it's documented, and documenting is a heavy pain project. So 1 second, I'm opening Discord. Sorry about that. Exactly logging to Discord. Need another invite to Discord? I will trust everyone on this channel and just invite everyone to Discord. Actually, there's nothing dangerous about inviting everyone to Discord. There we go. There is the Discord channel. Allow me a moment to log in too. And thank you for being willing to just jump on that. That's awesome. Here a 6-digit authentication code. I had to pick up my phone to get that code because everything's on that app. Oh, that looks really funky on the stream. Sorry, I had to pick. My phone is my webcam. So that's why this is happening. There we go. And I can set it down again. All right. I'm in Discord and I'm pretty sure it works. Yeah, everyone is welcome to join the Discord. Why is it showing Firefox? That happened. Here we go. Yeah, so anyone watching the stream, you're welcome to join the discussion. Just go ahead and join that, join the Discord from that link. Is this you, Derek? I can. Can you hear me all right? Thanks for sharing the stream, by the way, in the community Slack and getting word out there, and for joining on such short notice. So, you also stream, right? What days do you stream? Oh, you can talk after, and I can make sure that happens too. I think Sage has to give you access to edit community calendar. So, what are your feelings then about how to document this? Right. Yeah. Right. The boat is huge. Right. Right. Because they're not too different. They take the same arguments. They have very similar output. For item, one of the things I really do want to keep from what we did in item AWS is we Pythonified all of the arguments. Because AWS, it was, well, and we made tagging consistent. Because AWS, sometimes when you put your tags in for a new resource, it's a list of dictionaries that have a key and a value, and that's it. Like a key that is named key and a value that is named value paired with the actual key and value, rather than just being a sane dictionary. And sometimes they use just a sane dictionary. So I would want to make some of those awkward things more consistent, and I would also want to Pythonify the argument. That would be lowercase underscore delimit rather than txt. Right. Hmm. Right. And we're gonna have to, once we have the exec modules done, then it might take a full team to fully build out the states. That's where the heavy lifting is. But exec modules would be a huge step. Um, this one. Hmm. Let's look at the layout real quick then. And if you're going to auto-generate exec modules and it can have a really clean way of doing that, that would be a better way of doing things. What I'm trying to do with item GCP is GCP comes with discovery out of the box of what functions are available. And I could probably do something like that for AWS, just auto-generate everything. So if we were to do item AWS in that way, like have it be a raw wrapper for Photo 3, but with uh, more Pythonic syntax with namespacing the crap out of everything. But Bodo, yeah. And use AIO Bodo core under the hood. So right now with item AWS, it's like we're supporting AIO Bodo and local stack and synchronous Bodo as a backend, and I think we need to decide that there's one way to do it. Right. And part of the reason I was supporting so many of them was part of research to figure out which was faster, wrapping the synchronous calls or yeah. Hmm. What would be easier for you for auto-generating docs if we just use Bodo libraries? Hmm. Yeah, that would be a lot better. I'm kind of I'm getting the feeling that would be really nice to just nuke item AWS and start over and just pull things in as we need them one at a time. Yeah, each of those should be a different uh plugin subsystem altogether. But yeah, I'm because I wrote item AWS and I've shown it to many people. I've demoed it so many times, but no one's really picked up on it and ran with it. And I think it's because it's not a direct wrapping of the API. There isn't clear documentation behind it. So whatever we can do to get nice clear documentation rather than having me just do hundreds of hours of copy pasting, that's not reasonable. Right. Because the exec modules, they don't need to be anything but a raw wrapper of the API for item, and then the states is where we need to do the heavy work. We shouldn't be spinning our wheels on exec modules. Right. Mhm. So talking with you about it, then I'm almost thinking that for the exec modules, those arguments shouldn't be Pythonic. They should be exactly the same as Bodo's for simplicity. And then in the states, do a translation that is more. Or what do you think about that in general? Is it worth the effort to change everything to underscores and lowercase? Yes, we'll be on at least Python 3.6. And we can auto generate that. Okay. Right. Right. Like how we'd use it from within a state's execution module. Yeah. And I think from where you're talking about it, that makes it way easier to extend, which is why Item AWS hasn't had any traction. Because people look at it and then they're like, this is not easy to get off the ground. Right. So how hard would it be to write that? So you would be writing docs, or would this be automatically generating exec modules? And could this be something like a pre-commit hook? Oh, like we have on GitLab, we have something that watches the GitLab API, and every time it updates, it just releases a new version of Item AWS automatically. Oh, that is very nice. And then we can use it. We can pin the version of the auto-generated API. Mm. And we wouldn't get any PRs from a human into that repo. Yeah, I think I would want the builder repo to be inside of it. Because other than that, there's not going to be much in there. Like when AWS adds a feature, like they add resource groups, then we know exactly when. Mhm. Right. Huh. I'm liking this a lot, and I think if we could do that actually for every cloud, we could instantly have full exec module coverage in every cloud by just writing some really complex build scripts. Mhm. Right, already with the command line. And then it just comes down to us to write the authentication plugins and the state module plugins. Yeah.
of the build automation can even build local stack tests, because if the docs have examples in them, wouldn't we want to maybe just recycle those example calls or something like that to somehow be mocked? Because that's going to be the hardest part, is if we generate them, we go, okay, cool, we have a bunch of code, but we have no idea if it works yet. And we'd have to have some enough test automation in place that's checking us to make sure, hey, did you guys even do this properly?
I realized just now that your voice wasn't coming through on the stream. So,
oh, okay, so you're kind of talking to yourself.
Yeah, that's what it seemed like until just now. So I apologize for anyone that was watching. I saw the view numbers go up and then down, and I was like, oh, someone. It was probably a moment when I was listening. Well, this is
just staring off.
Just watching Tyler staring off into space, listening to Derek. So it will make sense starting at this point. What's going on? So to kind of rehash everything then, for those that were confused by the one-sided conversation, is we think we can automate the creation of exec modules, docs, and tests for every cloud.
Yeah, we'd have to, and it would be starting with AWS, because their API is amazingly done, and the ability to retrieve their docs, which natively you can retrieve them in RST, which is perfect for us, right, is like an amazing starting place. But I think that this kind of strategy is what would have to be revisited for any cloud provider, be it on-premise tools, be it, let's say VMware, let's say Azure, let's say whatever.
For VRA, for vSphere, vHorizon.
Totally.
Because all of them are very well documented.
Well, not only that, but I think from this, when I've looked at the docs for certain VMware products, they've been really moving to adopt, for a lot of their tooling, and open API, it's like Swagger. And if you're able to get a schema standard like that, then there's potential being built into place to go, because this is the crazy future forward thinking view, is what if we could create pop item tooling to ingest an open API stuff to then auto generate a module, like execution modules.
Now that's an amazing concept.
Yeah, because that would be a really awesome tutorial to do, or something to work on supporting, because the growth potential would be really big.
Right. And my personal goal, this isn't a business, I'm not speaking for VMware when I say it. My personal goal would be to get Idem to a place where it competes with Terraform.
Oh, yeah.
Terraform is complicated, and having item states, which are very similar to salt states for managing your clouds, that's the $1 billion idea.
Well, it would be cool to see. Well, I mean, there's a lot of tools let's say there's GitLab, GitHub. I mean, what I hope to see too is from a lot. This is our workflow. Our workflow is using GitHub, is using GitLab, is using AWS, right, or what have you. And so it's like, hey, if we could, So as Bearded Eagle pointed out in Twitch, hey, there's already tooling to generate stuff from Open API specs, and he's right. That it does, that there are Python modules that you can get generated. And if you can have Python modules generated, then would you wrap around the Python modules that get generated from those Open API specs, or what would be the best bet to do to work with that? But I haven't played with their tooling as much, and I didn't know how outdated. I remember they were. I don't know who exactly supports the ones that generate those stubs, but.
Yeah. So how long do you think it would take you to create an Idem AWS auto?
Well, I could get a proof of concept with the docs. with the docs and really basic module layout by converting my Bodo 3 one over. But the thing is, I would need to look through how you've been doing Idem AWS since, because I was mapping it off of how you were doing Idem AWS back in October.
Yeah, and it hasn't changed since then because I've been doing other stuff since October.
Oh, okay. Well, then I think I should demo with you what it currently does, and then see like what can we do to make it better for a baseline.
Oh, Bearded Eagle asks, what's the point of this? Missed the first half of the meeting. The goal is having stateful control of your cloud infrastructure. And the goal with the automatically generated item wrapper would be to popperize, for lack of a better word right now, popperize an entire module so that we can easily create state execution modules from it. If we can automatically wrap Bodo 3 in item, then all we have to do is make a ton of state modules. Yeah, so that's the end goal.
Yeah.
Stateful cloud.
And well, not just that, but auto-generating the docs, because that's
Yeah.
the other piece.
Because we've had cloud working group meetings where we're like, here, can we please have some help documenting Idem AWS, and no one wants to do it because it's copy pasting.
Yeah, and if we end up working on auto-generating the docs, then we're pretty much able to hand in hand also automate the testing of said docs and execution modules.
Right, and if we have an Idem AWS auto that is automatically generated, then we have a version of Idem AWS that is a one-to-one mapping of how the Bodo API works. So everyone can predict how it will work. They just need to authenticate the item way with some tokens. And we even have made Idem AWS authenticate the same way Bodo does. It'll use your existing Bodo credentials to authenticate item.
Awesome.
So item will work out of the box. Yeah, and really you don't have that with Bodo. You can't just say create a VPC and throw in all the parameters on the command line. And you can't do that with item. And then we have a separate repo that makes it Pythonic, that makes it pretty, and makes states out of it.
Yeah, because you can, like you said, then we could have auto releasing, because we could have a PyPI pipeline, and we could have the plugin that's importing that plugin to be pinned, like you said, to a particular version.
Mm-hmm. And then we can actually make sure it works from a human perspective before releasing.
Yeah, it would be, yeah, be like, hey, that pretty much, if someone's just going straight up Idem AWS auto, it's going to be like, well, this is the experimental one. It's mapped to the API, but
right, hopefully it works. We don't
promise
anything.
Which is why our baseline would be, if we can get that local stack automated testing, would be pretty best effort, I suppose, because then I don't know if, I mean, that's the best I could think of, because otherwise, like you said, there's no, hey, this thing was auto-generated and it's including maybe the bleeding edge features and services that you've wanted to use, but nobody's maybe used it as a human yet.
And Randy's joined the meeting on Discord, but you're muted. But welcome. Party.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now? What are you thinking?
Right. So I guess one of my questions would be, is this something that is ran to auto-generate the docs and the state modules prior to a release, or is this something that's kind of done on the fly?
On the fly is what we're talking.
This would be, because what I'm thinking is that it would auto-generate the execution modules, not state ones, and the docs for the execution modules based off of that mapping to the API, and can be done. There could be an automated way of doing it, and this as in a separate item plugin. So it'd be something like Idem AWS Auto, where it could be mapped to whenever the API gets updates on AWS's side. But like Tyler was saying, when it comes to an Idem AWS release, which would be dependent on Idem AWS Auto for execution modules, it would be, you'd be pinning to a newer version when you're upgrading. Oh.
Somehow I got booted off.
Oh, you're back.
Yeah, somehow I got booted off. Sorry about that. I guess my question would be, what would we do to prevent modules or execution modules from just disappearing from out running the people if this is running kind of on the fly?
Well, that's why we would pin the version in Idem AWS. So Idem AWS Auto is generated on the fly in a PyPy pipeline. Okay. And it would release automatically every time there's a change to the Bodo API. Boom, bump up a version number, and maybe a bunch of execution modules get deleted. But then we look at that and we fix the build wrapping, and we pin a blessed API or Idem Bodo Auto version. We pin a blessed version of that inside of Idem AWS. So you wouldn't have to worry about things breaking unless you were constantly upgrading Idem AWS Auto. Use the experimental version.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, we could even, it depends on how far you'd want to go with that type of release strategy, because there is also a test PyPI, and so you could technically, because there'd be like a difference then if you wanted blessed versions of auto and non, is that you could have something like a bleeding edge goes to the test PyPI.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, bleeding edge goes there, and then every time we pin a version, we're like, hey, we've actually used this one. Put it on the real PyPy.
Yeah, it's definitely something you'd want to make a call out for, at least, as well. Even with the pin in place, just to make sure that consumers aren't accidentally updating to the newest version of something, and then they have modules they were using before that just aren't there anymore.
Right. Actually, I think even PyPI also even has labels for pre-release packages too. Actually, now that I think about it, so that even if I think a pre-release version is available by default, people are installing the release version. I have to look back at the PyPI docs on that one.
Is there a limit to how many times we can release on PyPy or PyPy? I like saying PyPy, but I'm saying PyPI.
Yeah, I guess I don't know the best way to say it either. PyPy. I love Pi, so let's Pi square it. Yeah.
Pre-release tags, I think they have them. I just don't know. I haven't really interacted with the API enough to know how we would identify those. I don't assume that would be difficult though.
Easy. We write an automatic wrapper for Idem PyPy and start cranking out some states.
As for the auto generators, so like I know that whoever the heck produces Swagger UI also has an auto generator. However, it's written in Java. Yeah, it's pretty bad. However, it wouldn't be difficult to say, take that and kind of produce a pop plugin that would sort of do the same thing. I instead of using an existing one and then running over the generated stubs to ensure that they are quote unquote Popeyes or whatever, or having a hook that would come in prior to, just have it have the entire thing in a pop plugin itself would be better.
Yeah, that would be really cool to have a sort of pop open API package generator.
Right, and it really depends on how much you want it to do, though. For the most part, you can't really go past stubs, though, in terms of generating what the API provides. There's obviously now with the advent of typing and MyPy, we can go a little further with making sure that all of the type specs are correct throughout the environment as well. Perhaps setting up either Marshmallow or Pydantic models for validation, stuff like that. But beyond that, they'd just be stub functions.
Yeah, that type hinting stuff was the same thing we'd be able to actually take advantage of too from the AWS API, which will be kind of cool to have that built in to extend its functionality using, wait, what is it called? MyPy, or that one that tests the types?
MyPy.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so that, yeah, as long as the API actually provides types, which it should for all open API spec compliant APIs as well as GraphQL APIs. If those types are being published, it's very easy to, like I said, not only generate the stub functions, but then generate the models that would be used for validation or for input.
Yeah, totally. That would definitely assist with, because that's that second piece is how do I not only am I like I'm needing to auto generate tests too.
Right. And if you're coming at it, Derek, if you're able to auto generate exec modules, tests, and docs, don't follow any pattern. Just do it however that is easiest. And if you can hand me a bunch of exec modules that are automatically generated, and then I can just use those and then kind of structure them my own way inside of Idem AWS, that would be fine.
Well, I see, and that's where I'll just need a little bit of help and guidance, because my testing skills are not that good. And so when it comes to going, hey, let's auto gen the test too, I'd be like, here's the data. I'd like to follow. Let's figure out a simple template for me to do that.
Okay. So how much time would you have to dedicate to this, Derek, to generate a proof of concept that does an Idem AWS photo or Idem photo auto?
Well, I already have a proof of concept that was wrapped around Boto 3, and it created the entire exec tree for all the different types. And
Can you show me?
Man, I haven't ran it in a while. I don't remember how far I got when I went to do the demo.
Or do you have something that shows what the last thing it generated was? I'm just curious what the structure looked like.
Yeah, I'd have to go. So I think I just need to run through and generate it again so I could show you, because I don't remember. I was getting my repo to go, but because I wanted to just simply have a proof of concept repo that even auto generated all the docs with GitLab pages, so that you could just hop on and look through everything. But at the time for the demo, I pretty much got it to do that, but the pipeline in place isn't really. If you were to go look at the repo, you would only see the build tools and not the output of what the build tools made.
Right.
But I could definitely show you what its current structure is, because then you could tell me if, hey, that's great, or no, here's some minor modifications to how that should be done.
Right. Because I know that you've got your own work that you're doing, but this could, if we do this, and like if you just hand me that proof of concept, I don't know, it could save months and months of work.
See that?
Like,
well,
I'm really excited by what you're talking about. Even I don't want to just all of a sudden thrust a huge project onto you, but I really want to make this happen.
No, yeah, I would actually like to just see if I can simply convert the proof of well, for one, I could just show you how it is with the Boto 3 output. But I think it will take minor effort to modify it for Bodo, because I remember back when I was looking, the gen docs function calls in both Bodo 3 and is it Bodo Core or Bodo? They were very similar, and so the generative side of it might be, the transition might not be too complex going from Bodo 3 to the other.
And I'm thinking about it some more, and I think for the auto docs, we shouldn't have any authentication, any account plugins in there. It should just be execution modules, and have all of the account plugins for authentication be in Idem AWS.
Yeah, that would be much better, because that would be human generated stuff.
Right, because the authentication can be tricky, and I think we do want a human looking at that. And yeah, and state modules would go over there, and oh, this is just huge. Thank you so much, Derek, for
like this is like why, like, in around September, October last year, when I was thinking about the stuff you were working on and Nick was working on, I was thinking, oh man, there's just no way. How the hell are they gonna keep up, or what are they gonna have in the baseline, and what's gonna allow the to be, I don't know, an alternative to what other people are already using, especially if there's only one or two devs adding the extra features in.
Right.
It's to go, okay, AWS already did a ridiculous amount of work with this, so how can
now
we jump
we just
on?
need a bunch of interns to copy paste it when we could just write a script.
Yes, exactly. And yeah, so I think it'd be cool, because it'll be a big learning experience that we could potentially then roll right into the other tools for the other targets.
We roll this out for AWS and then do it for GCP, which I looked at trying to auto-generate Idem or GCP's API for Idem. That might make an interesting thing to look at.
Yeah, and make sure, and when you're doing this too, is make sure to take into account their docs, because that's the kind of cool bonus that this could be doing, is not just giving you the ability to make the execution modules, but to even populate the documentation for what do each of the parameters do. Because I still really want us to do you remember that issue that was open? Maybe it was at the pop level, or yeah, maybe it was at the pop level, to add the feature to see help at this CLI, kind of like salt functionality, where you go, show me all the functions. And
is that still open? Is that a thing I can point to?
Yeah. Let me hop into there on GitLab.
Yeah. Send me a link for that when you have it, but I'm sharing my Idem GCP. So Idem GCP, it's just one init plugin, and this imports GCP's API's discovery tool. And GCP is a mess because you have to have a role that can access specific functionality. I posted so fine-tuned with the rules in Twitch. Nice. Use that. Yeah. So this is what my automatically generating exec modules looked like for GCP. I guess I can share that to Twitch too. Yeah. My foray into automatically generating exec modules. Okay.
Speaking of pop projects,
yeah,
you'll be happy to know the TMAT is now on PyC parser 220.
Nice. So we got your PR in, and
yeah, I totally fixed it. It was just unsafe optimization. The -00 was not what we wanted. It was just -0.
And I tried to look at what that did. Was it removing docs, adding the extra O?
Yeah, it removed the doc strings, which PyC parser requires.
Yeah. And we want the doc strings.
Yep.
Does it make the binary slightly bigger?
A couple of megs, not much.
I guess text isn't a lot.
Yeah, and it's just the doc strings. It's not like it's the actual docs themselves as well being slurped in.
So what am I looking at here, Derek?
Yeah, so what you're
Add
looking
some
at
stuff.
is, yeah, so when you're using salt, you can be like, hey, there's a few things you could do. You could say, show me what functions are even available in this module, and then it can tell you. And then you could say, well, can you show me what this function does? And it will spit out the doc strings associated with it. So
Oh,
people
we
can,
have this.
in Pop.
Yes. Haven't you seen Pop Tree?
Oh, I see. PopTree can provide this. Well, so I guess the other part then was the second piece. If you scroll down,
If you look at the stream real quick, I'll show you
yeah, I'm watching.
add sub item. What? I need to install Pop Tree. Bad. Boom, I have this, and it shows me what exec modules went on the hub. And oh man, it's been a while since I've played with my own tool here.
Crazy.
Graph details. This gives me the doc strings if they exist, the args attributes for everything on the hub.
Now, when you say they give you the doc strings,
I don't have doc strings in Idem AWS.
Oh, okay.
So that's why you're not seeing any.
I think that brings up a good point too, though. Had he known about this, it's probably something he could have dug into a little deeper. Where are we? I know we have the Pop Awesome list, but where are we really keeping the documentation on how all of these projects kind of tie into each other or provide certain functionality overall?
Good question.
Yeah, I think that as part of this, there needs to be review of, because there's a few doc sets, right? There's one that's the Pop book, but then there's a different one where there are docs generated for Pop itself.
Right.
And
I think where Randy's going, like a Pop Awesome book, because we have all of these disparate Pop projects. How do they all fit together?
Yeah. Yeah, so this is actually a big question that I have been thinking about since I started learning more about Idem and Pop in general, is that the distributed nature of Pop and Idem, and really any Pop based tooling, means that, especially if everything that's following docs is code within each repo, it means distributed docs, and it means incredibly unsearchable docs at that too. And so it means that in the future there needs to be something of, for one, like of a gallery, right? Somewhere you can go and go, I want to know what Idem plugins there are, and I want to be able to search against them. And I've been thinking about this, where I wanted to get some documentation standards in place, starting with the Salt user guide, a kind of new, something that's going to start replacing our topic files in the main Salt repo. Is I wanted to get a lot of tooling in place so that we can have baselines on documentation, because it would be really cool to have a system that can, let's say this plugin is considered user ready. Can we now have that included in a site that is kind of like a collection of the docs? Because if it can import these repos and pull the docs into a centralized doc set, it would allow capability for people to say, I want to look, I want to search these docs. I want to look at all the things Pop can do. I want to see all these things. But I don't know. What are thoughts on that?
Pop Tree, I think, is a good standard for where to do that, because this gets all of the docs, and you can add subs. Like I can say graph details, add sub item, and now that adds the exec and state modules that I have installed on here, and adds all of those docs.
Tyler, can you be targeted then on kind of like, I want to just see the doc strings for a particular function?
We can't do that, but it would be trivial to add to this.
Yeah, because that'll be a big piece, is that especially if you have a ton of plugin, or especially AWS, right? If you type it in a Pop Tree on AWS, an auto-generated one, you're gonna get a trilogy of novels.
I wonder if I can say exec.aws or something. No, I can only say exec modules.
Yeah, and my concern there is if we have all these pop plugins already developed, we want to make sure that we're reducing duplications of efforts for consumers as they come in and they use the pop environment and ecosystem. Finding plugins that provide certain functionality within that environment is going to be key. As otherwise, it may either A, deter people from using pop because the functionality is not already there, or so they think, and or creating additional modules, which I mean, it's nice to have more than one way to solve a problem, but at the moment, I think it would be better for people to focus on new pop plugins over rewriting existing tooling. That way, we can expand the ecosystem further.
That's a good point. We don't want to reinvent the wheel every time we come up with a new project.
Right. I mean, so something as simple as to start out with is like, hey, I want to create something with pop that fulfills this functionality. All right. Well, let's go down the list of how I would develop this, and we'll walk through the code. These are the pop plugins that I would use to do this, so on and so forth. So that at least gets people exposure into how do I set up a pop project, what pop plugins do I use for certain levels of functionality, so on.
Right.
Yeah, I think it would be really cool. So when looking at the docs in general around this stuff, I think it would just be cool to have a walkthrough process on building an item or pop plugin and all the tools that come to mind and come to use in that kind of thing. Because that's a piece I think our docs say here are all the things you can use, and the quick start is this is how you pretty much use like what pop seed or pop
right, and that's not enough, and that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah,
that's what I'm trying to accomplish in this stream, is just show people how to use it in building out these modules. And
the problem there being that outside of a few community members, most of the people who know how to write in pop are SaltStack employees. So
right. And even then, it's not even 50% of Salt employees that know how to use pop.
Right.
Yeah, and we're each kind of trying to figure it out. Like I remember you helped me with the item read the docs where I just didn't even complete the module, and now if I go back to it, I bet I'll be like, oh man, how the hell did I do this, and what do I do now?
You did that really quickly and really well.
I don't know how it works with newer pop, but yeah, it seemed like it was cool doing it, and I just need to get that time, I think, to look back into it, because I think it'd be fun to maybe that could be something I could even write a behind the scenes making of, like, how did I make this module
with it too.
Yeah, that would be kind of cool. I mean, I only just stumbled across pop due to the fact that I was digging into building binaries of SaltStack, which led me to Tiamat, which then led me to Tyler.
Yeah.
See, Tiamat needs Tiamat needs a lot also on that note. And
the problem with Tiamat, though, is just a lot of the documentation is docs for how to interact with systems outside of Tiamat itself, though.
How do you guys feel then, from a binary perspective in Tiamat, about a new language designed around pop concepts?
That is a very big question. Like, you mean like an entirely new language, like we were discussing before?
Yeah, an entirely new language. We've talked about it a few times, designed around pop, where you have a hub, but it's not called hub. It's just /root. So the syntax for what this language would look like, we've talked about it in a few places.
Right.
The program would look like /ctx is how you would access your context. And you would want to call a function on the hub. It would be /exec/AWS EC2 VPC create, like this. That's how you would call something on the hub with the pop programming language.
Are you okay? So are we speaking more of like a DSL over Python that and specifically implements pop paradigm, or are we talking about an entirely new language written from
An
scratch?
entirely new language.
My concern would be since pop kind of does everything at a global type context, performance, how would that look?
It would be it'd be a compiled language. So it'd go straight down to machine
Okay.
code.
Okay.
And the language would also be able to compile to WebAssembly. So you would be able to have this language on the front end and the back end.
I'd almost say you should write the compiler in Rust then. 'Cause it can do both.
I'm not writing it. It's a proof of concept. It's a research thing that's going on right now. But
Gotcha.
I'm excited for it. Because I'm excited to have pop concepts.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a compiled language, that would obviously get rid of the perf issues. In terms of like calling it like that, I don't necessarily see the issue with the syntax. It's the same as an import, just with slashes instead of instead of dots.
Right. The idea, I think, is to make it more like what people are familiar with a file tree.
That's fair.
Because that's a namespace that everyone's familiar with. Build off of that.
What would you? I mean, is there a specific problem space you guys are looking to solve with pop as a language, or?
Let's see.
I mean, I guess what's the target audience for that?
Good question. I guess that's kind of why it's just a research project right now. We'll see.
Is Thomas leading this research project?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll see where it goes. It's just kind of like I'll be on the lookout for that. Be excited about it. We'll see what comes of it.
And it could be certainly interesting. I guess one of the natures of pop being that plugins can be loaded sort of dynamically. I'm curious how they would achieve that at a language level when the end product is aesthetically compiled. Is it you add in all of your dependencies prior to compilation, or is there a way to dynamically load modules after the fact? Or
that's a great question, and we'll see how it ends up happening. The goal would be for things to be dynamically added.
Gotcha.
My vision for it, not that zero plans in place. I'm speaking as Tyler, the hypothetical person, not as any kind of a plans or any official speaking. But my vision would be to see an operating system built off of that, off of pop concepts. Because like when System D came out, I was a sysadmin at the time, and people were pissed, and there were always fights about init versus System D and how System D was ruining everything, and it breaks the Unix philosophy. But a pop-based operating system where you could update every plugin in place and where it actually is designed from the ground up to be like from the machine code level designed to be pluggable. I think that's kind of what we need to be the successor to Linux kernel, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, with Linux kernel, you can already do dynamic module loading. Now, is that space being looked at prior to this research being done, or are we just going to say, F it to lessons learned in the past and let's just move forward with our own idea?
This is, like I said, this is just me speculating what could be done. There's no overarching. I don't know what any overarching goals would be.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see the research once it gets someplace where it can be read, but until then, it's really hard to speculate on what particularly that would solve for that pop in its current incarnation doesn't already solve for.
One thing I shared on Wednesday, I can point at this again. Lab. Wait, I already have my pop awesome. How many tabs do I have open? This is really messy. Okay.
You call that a lot of tabs?
I don't like a lot of tabs. So over the holidays, I wrote this GUI for a horror video game that I play using Qt, and it was awesome. Like the app wasn't awesome, but using pop for Qt was awesome. I defined all of my plugins in their own place, and then my layout, it was just like I fun. Let me look through this. If you're watching the stream right now too, you can see. So I would define a widget by itself in its own plugin. Like here's where I'm creating the grid. Here's where I'm creating a description widget, an icon widget. And every widget was defined there. And then in my CLI function, this is where I defined the layout. So all of my widgets and on my layout were created completely separately. So where normally Qt, you have kind of a ton of polymorphism and inheritance, and if you want to move a window or an icon from one place to another, it can be a huge hassle trying to figure out all the places it's connected. But using pop and tracking everything on the hub, it was really easy to, if I want to change the layout, I'm changing the layout in one place, and it's not affecting how everything works. So what I'm getting
like I said,
from is the hub and pop work great for Qt applications, and I think it'll work great as well for web applications for making a REST API. I think pop is ideal for that kind of an application.
Yeah,
so I would
like
be
I said,
excited about seeing an OS built off of those.
Yeah, my thing is more like it really depends on how you want to look at things. Having a global mutable state it obviously fits certain problem areas, but it's not going to fit everything, right?
Yeah.
I think, and I can't remember, but didn't I don't remember if I heard Tom saying this on a podcast or something, but because he talked about pop being something that he can be implemented in any language, and that he even tested out or he looked at what it would be like in Go and other languages.
He tried it. He liked Julia best, but he wrote it in so many different languages before going from pack to pop.
Yeah, and I kind of hit on this in the pop channel the other day when somebody was asking whether or not that was an original concept. Anything that implements, protocols, behaviors, or composability, you can make something like this in. But having an explicit design concern is more of a new thing, whereas it can be a design concern of certain systems, but not usually of languages themselves. I program a lot in Erlang and Elixir, and doing plugin-based systems is kind of just how you do web frameworks over there. So it's something that can be applied all over the place.
Right.
Hey, Randy, did you mention that you were? I thought I heard you one time saying that you wanted to work on a fast API implementation of Salt API. Do I remember that right?
Yeah, it's about halfway done right now.
Oh, dude. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So the goal there was Cherry Pie is old and should have died off a long time ago. Replacing that with a fast API implementation would provide a better async story for the Salt API itself, but also just generally better code due to typing and additional security concerns that could be solved there that are harder to solve in Cherry Pie due to its age. The other thing is then, making sure that either Pepper or whatever async client I produce for the fast API implementation also handles async events fairly easily as well.
Yeah, it's like and Fast API, isn't it like an open API standard by default the way it gets implemented?
Yes, and you can produce REST APIs and GraphQL APIs with it. Which in terms of like infrastructure management, GraphQL APIs is actually a pretty good concept to apply to it.
Sounds awesome all around.
And then, you know, obviously, generally speaking, Fast API is probably going to be as performant or more performant than the Tornado API, but way more performant than the Cherry Pie one as well.
Have you looked at, Randy, what the Beacons repo or Gate or some of those other new projects?
I've had time to give them cursory looks, but for the most part, I've been bogged down by a lot of stuff going on at work right now. I've just now starting to get back into developing for Tiamat. So
right. Yeah, and we need to get those the Tiamat 8 feature. How do you feel about Tiamat 8 and adding different backends for building binaries? Do you think that's still a good way to go?
You mean the discussion we had before with Thomas?
Yeah.
Yeah, I still think that's a good idea. Yeah, whether or not that's something I could have done before, you know, end of Q2 this year, though, is another story. I think that's something we could definitely accomplish this year, though. Replacing the backends obviously are going to allow for people to build out binaries more suited to the way they need them to be. And you know, most people are probably just going to stick with the PyInstaller backend by default, which would probably be the default. But say, for instance, you have memory constraints or other constraints, you know, PyOxidizer might be a better idea. As new technologies come out, or as new binary technologies come out for libraries come out for Python, as long as we provide stable interface, creating a plug or a pop plugin around that to get it into Tiamat will be very easy going forward.
Right.
But there's, in particular, when we're talking about Salt, there's a lot of work that needs to be done in the Salt code base itself to allow it to be compiled by these different backends as well. There are going to be backends where projects are just not going to work. Like I said, right now the PyOxidizer one, I know I've talked to you about that one before. So the use of the -- file -- or underscore, sorry, prevents us from being able to use that just by default. PyOxidizer isn't able to actually follow those. So we need to make sure that everything was either using like package resource or import lib, and then make sure that we were documenting Tiamat so that consumers were aware of the fact that you need to ensure that when you're writing your code, you're writing it in a way that these backends can actually follow those paths.
Mm.
In terms of providing new and exciting functionality, I mean, it really depends on the backend that we're talking about. As of the moment, I mean, as soon as we get the Mac code in, generating Salt binaries or any binaries for that matter for Mac, Windows, and Linux is then a solved problem. The thing is about most of the backends for Tiamat that we could consume is they don't really so much add additional functionality to binaries so much as they just use different methods of packaging it up.
Where do we ever leave off with creating an Alpine Linux image on Docker?
If I remember correctly, I gave up some months ago.
Yeah, me too.
I have since come back to that, and I have an almost working Docker image for that. I've actually been going through StaticX's muscle C code. There seems to be some issues in the C code preventing us from being able to create truly statically compiled binaries on Alpine. So it's right now it's more of a the image itself is on hold until I can get the library kind of wrangled in.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you both for joining, and I've got to get going at on the hour, but is it alright if we wind down now?
Yeah, no, appreciate having the conversation about all of this cool stuff.
Yeah, really appreciate you guys participating and on the on the fly just joining. That was really great, and I really appreciate the conversations we had here.
You guys have a good day.
You too.
You too.
Peace. Go. Pulled out of Discord. Yeah, so sounds like we got a lot of fun things in the work, a lot of really good ideas, and I'm excited to see where we go after all of this. And you can catch Wayne's stream tomorrow, the test clinic, at 9 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time. And if you have any questions, hit me up in Slack. And thank you everyone for joining. Next time.